So pretty much it's pretty simple positioning on that fight. Phase 1, we're just going to have, 2 stack points, and then phase 2, we just kind of adjust to the position of the boss, and everybody runs around and makes sure that we soak all the circles. And again, pretty straightforward encounter, but there is lots of room to screw it up and cause wipes. All right, Zek'voz. This is a 3-phase encounter. On testing, it was also fairly long. As you can see here, it's I think it was a 10-minute fight, and they wiped. So I half anticipate it going a little faster than that. So phase 1, or throughout all the phases, the boss will do a series of attacks on the tank. The monk should take over tanking here in a second. He's going to cast 2 abilities. So the whole thing is called Might of the Void, and whenever he starts a Might of the Void cast, he's going to do a Void Lash, which is a front cone that applies a 50% healing received, minus 50% healing received debuff for 8 seconds. And then he's going to shatter that same tank, and then which deals physical damage and applies a 50% physical damage taken debuff. And then he's going to Void Lash again. The way everybody was handling this is the active tank takes the first Void Lash and the Shatter, and then they taunt swap, and the second tank takes the second Void Lash. So that one tank doesn't have a 100% healing reduction. So that's going to happen through all 3 phases. For phase 1, there's essentially 2 mechanics in play. There's the Silithid Warriors, which are all those little ads that spawn. They spawn in set locations, in 2 little triangles behind the boss there, or I guess in front of the boss, to the left and the right. Those fixate on players, and if they reach them, they apply a bleed dot. Ideally, if you're targeted by this, you want to group up in melee so we can just AoE these down. They were grippable and stunnable during testing. This is one of the other
Il'gynoth blood ads.
Yeah, kind of like those. This is his other ability. If you remember the council fight at the beginning of dang it, that Mr. Pandaria raid. There's just, they've had it in other fights. There's three areas of AoE, and it's random whether it's going to be the middle one, or the outer one, and we've got to basically do the dance and dodge the AoE. That's going to be in all 3 phases, and he does that, I think when he's at 100 energy. Yeah. Whenever he's at 100 energy. In the center of it is where the tank is standing. So that's where the middle's going to be every time of that ability. The tank, during this, the boss can still do his Might of the Void. So as we're dodging these mechanics, like the 3 circles there, don't get in front of the boss, or you can get hit by the either of those Might of the Void cleave abilities, and take either the healing reduction or the physical damage taken increase. So the last ability, which is fairly hard to see, but I've got a clip of it up from that video, but I got a clip of it up in the Discord, is I-Beam. And it basically just puts a big purple Cthulhu eye over a player's head, and then zaps them 2 seconds later, and it will chain to anybody within 3 yards. So if you get this on you, especially if you're in melee, for ranged, we basically can just stay like 4 to 5 yards spread out, and we should be fine. Melee, you'll want to react to this fairly quickly and make sure you're not next to anybody. It deals increasing damage on each chain. It's actually the ad that calls it. It's basically like the Cthulhu I-beam, and it's actually cast by like Vision of Cthulhu or something like that is what it's called. So it's a direct reference to that ability. So once we transition to phase 2 at 70%, we're going to get, he no longer does the I-beam thing or the Silithid Warrior ads. We're now going to get 3 ads that spawn in a set locations in a triangle. There they are right there. These are going to cast an interruptible spell called Void Bolt. It does about 50% of a player's health. So we'll probably have markers up with assignments, have interrupts on each one, and we'll bring the boss over to probably the center one to start off, and have melee cleave onto it, or cleave onto the boss off of it, and have ranged split off to one of the others, and then everybody focus the third one down. So the other ability for this phase is Roiling Deceit. This is a 12-second debuff. You can see that pool at the bottom of the frame there. That's what gets dropped off after 12 seconds with this debuff. And if anybody runs across it, it's exactly like the clouds on Yogg-Saron. If anybody runs across it, it spawns a Guardian of Yogg-Saron ad. So this boss basically is all of the old gods mechanics combined into one. The Guardian of Yogg-Saron has to be tanked, so if we ever do get one, tank needs to pick it up. And when it reaches 100 energy or dies, it deals very high raid-wide damage. Ideally, we never want to spawn one of these. When you get one of those debuffs, you want to run it off to a corner, kind of like they were doing, and then make sure, like as we're dodging the circles and things like that, you don't run across one of those. At 40%, so okay, throughout the fight, those 4 big discs, like you see those like lightning beams coming across, those are called Titan Sparks. Throughout the fight, those just kind of shoot onto random players. They're not that big of a deal, it's just a little bit of damage. Once we hit 40% and push into the last phase, overload's going to happen, and the Titan Sparks are going to fire off continually. It doesn't end. Can't tell, but I think they're in the last phase here. So yeah, those Titan Spark things are going to fire off continually, and an Orb of Corruption is going to spawn. It is basically, it's like the balls on that boss in Ice Crown, the Sand Lane guys. Can't remember boss names tonight for some reason.
The Blood Council?
Yeah, Blood Council. It's like those. When someone stands under it, it will pop it back up into the air. And it gives that player a debuff called... I didn't write down what it was called, apparently. But it gives that player a debuff for 30 seconds, increasing their damage done by 100%. Their health, damage, and healing by 100% for 30 seconds. But when it expires, that player is mind controlled and will spam cast a fear ability at a random target. That is, it's interruptible, but so ideally, when you're about to get mind controlled, you want to stack up in melee, and we will want to lock that player down and DPS them down. There's no way to, on normal, this breaks at 50%. On heroic, you cannot break it. You have to kill the player to get rid of that mind control. And then I believe their mind control.
Corruptor's Pack.
Yeah,
is the name of the.
Thank you. Yeah, Corruptor's Pack. So basically, like that's the swirly. There's going to be an orb that lands where he's tanking right now. One orb spawns, and then about every 45 seconds, like once you catch it, like you can see that orb kind of looping over across. Someone's going to stand in it. Or I think they are with the AoE. They may have gotten out of it. Once you bounce it up, it's going to arc over and land someplace else, and then every 45 seconds he adds another orb, so there will be 2 orbs bouncing around, and 3 eventually. So more and more people are going to be getting the debuff and getting mind controlled. So it's basically a DPS race to utilize the buff, keep the fears under control, and kill the boss before things just kind of get out of hand. There was a thought going around from things I had read that you could have the same player run around and catch the orb multiple times and just extend the buff, but I have not seen any logs where anybody tried that and was able to extend the buff. So my assumption is it actually isn't viable, but probably like to try it, at least see if the same player can grab the orb, and at which point, we would just have three players run around, get the 100% DPS increase, never get mind controlled, and do that rather than have to deal with, rather than getting the DPS increase for multiple people. But I'm assuming that's not how they want the fight to be.